You want to know about humans? Oh, by the 12 moons of Vortanis, do I have a story for you? The name is Qrix-9, Senior Trade Analyst for the Galactic Commerce Federation. And I was there when everything went sideways. Literally sideways, because that human female made our entire diplomatic protocol spin like a broken gravity generator. It started 3 cycles ago when the Federation Council decided in their infinite wisdom that humanity deserved a seat at the big table. You know, the one where we decide who gets to trade what, where, and for how much. The same table where civilized species have been conducting business for over 2,000 years without anyone getting their tentacles in a twist. They're just another species, insisted Coordinator Blux, our 3-eyed administrator who couldn't spot trouble if it bit his posterior appendage. What could possibly go wrong? Famous last words. Those were. The human they sent was named Maya Torres, unremarkable-looking creature. Really, 2 arms, 2 legs, that standard mammalian configuration that makes you wonder how they ever managed to climb out of their primordial soup, about average height for their species, with dark hair pulled back in what they call a bun and wearing one of those strange human garments they insist on calling a business suit. But her eyes, oh, those eyes should have been our first warning. They were the color of their planet's sky before a storm, and they tracked movement like a hunter watching prey. When she smiled, which she did often, it never quite reached those calculating orbs. "Greetings, esteemed colleagues," she announced upon entering the grand chamber, her voice carrying that peculiar human accent that made everything sound vaguely threatening.
"I'm absolutely thrilled to be here."
Thrilled. As if conducting interstellar commerce was some sort of recreational activity, the Nexari delegation, led by Ambassador Zilth, barely contained their amusement. The Nexari, with their crystalline exoskeletons and superiority complexes, had been the dominant trade power for centuries. They viewed this human newcomer like we might observe an amusing pet attempting to perform tricks. "How quaint," Zilth commented, his voice dripping with condescension. "I do hope you understand the complexities of our trade agreements, little human." Maya's smile widened. "Oh, don't worry about me. I've done my homework." Homework, another bizarre human concept that makes learning sound like labor. The first order of business was the Andorian spice routes. Now this was serious stuff, the kind of negotiation that typically took months of careful deliberation. The spices from Andoria Prime were worth more than most planets' entire annual output, and the routes had been controlled by the Nexari Consortium for over 4 centuries. "The current arrangement is quite satisfactory," Zilth began, activating the holographic display that showed the intricate web of trade routes spanning 3 sectors. "We propose maintaining the status quo with a modest 2% increase in transit fees. Standard operating procedure, boring, predictable, and profitable for everyone already in power." But then Maya stood up, walked to the display, and did something that made every being in that chamber stop breathing through their various respiratory systems. She laughed. Not a polite chuckle, mind you, but a genuine from-the-belly laugh that echoed off the chamber's acoustic dampeners. "Oh, that's adorable," she said, wiping what humans call tears from her eyes. "You actually think that's going to work?" The temperature in the room seemed to drop several degrees. Zilth's exoskeleton shifted to a deeper shade of amber, which in Nexari body language translates roughly to prepare for war. "I beg your pardon," he said, his voice taking on that dangerous harmonic that had made lesser species surrender entire star systems. "Well," Maya said, returning to her seat and folding her hands in a gesture that looked innocent but somehow felt predatory, "it's just that you seem to be operating under the assumption that you still hold all the cards." She paused, letting that statement sink in like acid through hull plating. "But you see, I've been doing some research." She touched a control on her tablet and suddenly the holographic display changed. Where before it showed the Nexari trade routes, now it displayed something far more interesting: detailed shipping manifests, cargo records, and what appeared to be internal Nexari communications. "How did you?" Zilth began, but Maya held up one finger. "Oh, I'm just getting started," she said cheerfully. "You know, humans have this wonderful thing called the Freedom of Information Act. It's based on this crazy idea that information should be, well, free. So we applied the same principle to interstellar commerce." The display now showed something that made several delegates physically recoil: complete breakdowns of profit margins, shipping costs, and what the Nexari were actually paying the Andorians for their spices, versus what they were charging everyone else. The markup was astronomical, and now everyone could see it. "This is highly irregular," sputtered Coordinator Blux, his middle eye twitching in distress. These negotiations are supposed to be confidential. Maya turned to him with that predatory smile again. Are they though? I mean, we're all friends here, right? Just civilized beings trying to make an honest living. Honest. The way she said that word made it sound like an accusation. Ambassador Keith from the Valoran Collective leaned forward, his insectoid features clicking with interest. These figures, they're accurate? Oh, absolutely. Maya confirmed. Humans are very good with numbers. We've had to be. You know how it is. Survival of the fittest and all that. The way she casually mentioned survival as if it were still a daily concern sent shivers through multiple species equivalent of spinal columns. Zilth's exoskeleton had now shifted to a deep red, the Nexari equivalent of apoplectic rage. This is economic warfare. Warfare. Maya looked genuinely confused, tilting her head in that way humans do when they're pretending not to understand something perfectly well. I thought this was a negotiation. Isn't the whole point to get the best deal possible? She stood up again and began pacing, her movements fluid and controlled in a way that made every predator instinct in the room start screaming warnings. Here's what I'm thinking, she continued conversationally. The Andorians have been getting, 12% of the final sale price for their spices? That seems a bit unfair, doesn't it? The Andorian delegate, a tall, elegant being named Celis, had been silent up to this point. Now he spoke, his voice carefully neutral. The arrangement has been traditional. Traditional? Maya clapped her hands together, making several beings jump. I love traditions. Humans have lots of them, like the tradition of competition and the tradition of fair market prices. And my personal favorite, her smile turned absolutely feral, the tradition of cutting out the middleman. The silence that followed was so complete you could have heard a microorganism sneeze. You see, Maya continued, now walking slowly around the table like a shark circling wounded prey, humans have this thing called direct trade. Revolutionary concept, really. The producer sells directly to the consumer, eliminating unnecessary overhead. Every word was carefully chosen, delivered with the precision of a surgical strike. Zilth's voice, when he finally found it, was barely above a whisper. You couldn't possibly manage the logistics, the shipping alone. Oh, but we could. Maya's enthusiasm was terrifying in its intensity. You know what humans are really good at? Problem solving. We've been doing it for millennia. Wars, famines, plagues, hostile takeovers. We're very adaptable. She returned to her seat and leaned back, looking for all the world like a satisfied predator who had just cornered her prey. So here's my counter-proposal. Humanity offers to handle direct shipping from Andoria Prime to any interested buyers. We'll charge a modest 15% handling fee. That's less than half what you're currently charging, and the Andorians get to keep 60% of the final sale price instead of 12%. The math was devastatingly simple. The Andorians would make 5 times more profit, the buyers would pay significantly less, and the humans would still make a tidy profit. The only losers would be the Nexari, who would go from controlling a multi-trillion credit market to controlling exactly nothing. This is preposterous. Zilth slammed his appendage on the table with enough force to crack the surface. The Nexari consortium has invested centuries in building these trade relationships. You cannot simply sweep in and destroy everything. Maya's expression softened into something that might have been sympathy if you didn't know better. Oh, I'm not destroying anything. I'm just optimizing. It's what humans do. We find inefficiencies and correct them. She paused, her voice taking on an almost gentle tone that was somehow more terrifying than any threat. You know, my species has a saying, adapt or die. It served us well throughout our evolutionary history. The implication hung in the air, like poison gas. Ambassador Keith, from the Valoran Collective, was the first to break. What would humanity require for logistics support? And that's when Maya Torres revealed her true nature. Not the cheerful, enthusiastic human she'd been pretending to be, but something far more dangerous, an apex predator who had been playing with her food. Is can her food? With a trauma Larry Turi, Amive Hiv. Oh, that's very kind of you to ask, she said brightly. We'd need access to your shipping networks, preferably with preferential rates. Nothing too demanding, just recognition that humans are now a major player in this sector. One by one, the other delegates began to nod. The math was too compelling, the benefits too obvious. Even Coordinator Blux, despite his obvious discomfort, could see which way the cosmic winds were blowing. Within 2 hours, the centuries-old Nexari monopoly had been completely dismantled, and humanity had secured its first major victory in interstellar commerce. As the session ended and delegates filed out in various states of shock and excitement, I found myself alone with Maya Torres. She was packing her tablet, humming what I later learned was something called The Girl from Ipanema, completely unaware of, or unconcerned by the economic earthquake she'd just triggered. "Excuse me," I said, my curiosity overcoming my professional caution. "May I ask you something?" She looked up with those predator eyes and smiled, that not quite reaching the eyes smile. "Of course. What's on your mind? Was any of that planned? Did you know exactly how this would unfold when you walked in here?" Her laugh was soft this time, almost musical. "Oh, Qrix-9, can I call you Chris?"
Humans have been negotiating for thousands of years.
"We've done it in boardrooms and battlefields, at kitchen tables, and in the halls of power. We've negotiated with friends, enemies, and everything in between." She leaned closer, and I caught a whiff of that strange human scent, something like ozone before a storm. "The secret isn't in the planning," she said quietly. "It's in understanding that every negotiation is really about one thing: survival." The Nexari forgot that. They got comfortable, complacent. They thought their position was unassailable. She straightened up and slung her bag over her shoulder. "But humans never forget that everything can change in an instant. We've learned that lesson too many times to ever get comfortable." As she walked toward the exit, she turned back one more time. "Oh, and Qrix? Tell your friends that this was just the warm-up. Tomorrow we're discussing mining rights in the Kepler sector." The door closed behind her with a soft hiss, leaving me alone in the chamber with the lingering scent of ozone and the growing certainty that the galactic economy was about to become a very different place. I immediately sent a priority message to every contact I had in the mining sector. "Prepare for impact. The humans are coming." Because if Maya Torres could dismantle a centuries-old spice monopoly in 2 hours, what could she do to industries that were even less prepared for her particular brand of predatory negotiation? I had a feeling we were all about to find out. The next morning arrived with all the subtlety of a supernova, and I found myself questioning every life choice that had led me to this moment. The emergency meetings had lasted until the third moon set, with representatives from 17 different mining corporations demanding to know exactly what kind of catastrophe was heading their way. "She can't possibly understand our industry," insisted Vex Mortanis, CEO of Titan Deep Extraction. His confidence was adorable, really, like watching a small creature convince itself it could take on a starship with nothing but enthusiasm and poor judgment. I had tried to warn them, by all the gods of commerce. I had tried. Maya Torres entered the Grand Chamber at precisely 0800 Standard Galactic Time, carrying what appeared to be the same innocent tablet and wearing another one of those deceptively professional human garments. This time, however, she wasn't alone. Behind her walked 3 other humans, each one radiating that particular blend of competence and barely contained violence that their species seemed to specialize in. She introduced them with the casual air of someone discussing the weather rather than unleashing economic predators into our carefully structured galaxy. "This is Dr. Elena Vasquez, our geological specialist, former military, specializes in extractive techniques." The way she said extractive made it sound like a threat. "And this is Marcus Webb, our logistics coordinator. He used to run supply chains in what humans call challenging environments." Again, that innocent tone that somehow made everything sound ominous. "Finally, we have Lisa Park, our financial analyst. She has this fascinating background in what humans call corporate restructuring." The smile that accompanied this introduction was absolutely terrifying. Coordinator Blux's middle eye was twitching so violently, I was concerned he might achieve orbit. "Miss Torres, this is highly irregular. Negotiations are traditionally conducted by individual representatives." "Oh, absolutely," Maya agreed cheerfully. "But then again, traditionally mining operations weren't run by species who'd never actually seen their home planet's surface, were they?" The silence that followed was broken only by the soft whimpering sound coming from somewhere in the Nexari delegation. Apparently word of yesterday's massacre had spread. Maya activated her tablet, and once again the holographic display flickered to life. But this time, instead of trade routes, we were looking at something far more disturbing. A 3-dimensional map of every major mining operation in the Kepler sector, complete with production figures, profit margins, and what appeared to be real-time safety violation reports. Now, Maya began, her voice taking on the tone of a teacher explaining basic concepts to particularly slow students. I hope everyone's had a chance to review the materials we transmitted this morning. Materials, as if completely restructuring the fundamental basis of interstellar mining was just light reading. Dr. Vasquez stepped forward, her movements precise and economical. Before we begin, I'd like to address some concerns about human mining capabilities. Her accent was different from Maya's, sharper, with the kind of edge that suggested she'd spent considerable time in places where mistakes weren't forgiven. Humans have been extracting resources from hostile environments for thousands of years. We've mined at the bottom of oceans, in Arctic conditions, and in the vacuum of space. We've done it during wars, natural disasters, and economic collapses. She paused, letting that sink in. We're very good at it. The display changed to show a series of images that made several delegates physically recoil. Human mining operations that looked less like industrial facilities and more like mechanical organisms consuming entire landscapes. The difference, Dr. Vasquez continued, is that we don't just extract resources, we optimize extraction. We make it efficient, profitable, and, that predatory smile again, comprehensive. Ambassador Thek from the Gorillian Mining Collective leaned forward, his massive form blocking out one of the chamber's light sources. You speak of optimization, as if our current methods are inadequate. Oh, not inadequate. Maya jumped in, her enthusiasm absolutely radiant. Just limited. Bound by traditional thinking. The display shifted again, now showing side-by-side comparisons of Gorillian mining operations versus human equivalents. The differences were staggering. Where the Gorillians extracted maybe 30% of available resources, human operations showed extraction rates approaching 90%. How is this possible? Whispered corporation leader Zenth, his crystalline features reflecting the holographic data like a prism of dismay. Marcus Webb stepped forward, built like a human military vehicle and speaking with the kind of calm authority that made you believe he could organize the heat death of the universe if properly motivated. He gestured to the display. Sarah. Humans don't just think in terms of primary extraction, he explained. We think in terms of total resource utilization. What you call waste material, we call secondary opportunities. The display now showed something that made my head spin, a complete breakdown of how humans could turn every single byproduct of mining operations into profit. Slag became construction material, runoff became chemical precursors, even the displaced atmosphere was captured and processed. Nothing gets wasted, Webb continued. Nothing gets left behind. It's not just mining, it's complete planetary optimization. The room had gone so quiet you could hear the building's life support systems cycling. This wasn't just about better extraction techniques, this was about a fundamental difference in how humans approached the very concept of resource utilization. Vex Mortanis, who'd been so confident that morning, was now the color of week-old algae. You're talking about total extraction. We prefer comprehensive resource management, Lisa Park said, speaking for the first time. Her voice was soft, almost musical, which somehow made her words more terrifying. It's really just good business sense. She touched her own control device, and suddenly the display showed financial projections that made everyone's various forms of jaws drop. Profit margins that were 3, 4, sometimes 5 times higher than current operations. The beauty of the human approach, she continued, is that everyone wins. Well, almost everyone. That qualifier hung in the air like a sword suspended by gossamer thread. Planets get completely utilized instead of partially strip-mined and abandoned. Investors see dramatically higher returns. Workers get better pay because there's more profit to go around. She paused, her smile widening. The only ones who might not benefit are intermediaries, unnecessary overhead, inefficiencies in the system. The translation was crystal clear. If you weren't adding value, you were about to become extinct. This is madness. Vex Mortanis finally exploded, rising to his full height and gesturing wildly with all 4 of his arms. You cannot simply waltz into our sector and reorganize centuries of established practice. Maya looked genuinely surprised by his outburst. Why not? The simplicity of the question was devastating. Because, Mortanis sputtered, clearly struggling to find a reason that didn't sound ridiculous when stated out loud. Because it's the way things have always been done? Maya suggested helpfully. Because change is scary? Because someone might lose their comfortable position at the top of an inefficient system. Each suggestion was delivered with the kind of gentle patience usually reserved for explaining basic concepts to children. Let me ask you something, Vex. The use of his first name was somehow more intimidating than any formal title. When was the last time you actually visited one of your mining operations? The question caught him completely off guard. That is, never, Maya said, not unkindly. You've never actually seen the work being done. You've never stood on the surface of a planet and watched your equipment tear into its crust. You've never breathed the dust or felt the vibration of the extractors. She stood up and began that predatory pace again, but this time it felt less like hunting and more like teaching. A very dangerous form of education. Humans don't run operations from comfortable offices light years away, she continued. We get our hands dirty. We understand every aspect of what we're doing because we've done it ourselves. Dr. Vasquez nodded. I've personally operated every piece of equipment in our mining arsenal. I've crawled through extraction tunnels, analyzed core samples, and yes, I've made mistakes and learned from them. That's the difference, Webb added. You see mining as a business to be managed. We see it as a challenge to be conquered. The philosophical gap between the species was becoming clear, and it was terrifying in its implications. These humans weren't just competitors. They were a completely different type of entity. They were hands-on, adaptable, and utterly without the comfortable distance that had characterized galactic business for millennia. So, Maya said, returning to her seat with that satisfied predator expression, here's what humanity proposes. The display changed one final time, showing a comprehensive restructuring of the entire Kepler sector mining operations. It was breathtaking in its scope, and absolutely horrifying in its efficiency. We'll take over direct operations of any facilities that want to partner with us. Current owners maintain equity stakes proportional to their resource contributions, but operational control transfers to human management. She paused, letting the implications settle. Projected profit increases range from 200 to 500% within the first cycle. And if we refuse? The Hatter asked, his massive voice barely above a whisper. Maya's smile could have powered a small star. Then you compete with us. The beauty of it was that there really wasn't a choice. Partner with the humans and maintain some profit, or compete with them and watch your entire industry become obsolete within a few cycles. One by one, the mining representatives began to nod. Mathematics, it seemed, was a universal language of surrender. But then something unexpected happened. Ambassador Qrix from the Stellar Mining Guild stood up, his elderly frame somehow radiating defiance. No, he said simply. Maya raised an eyebrow. No? No, Qrix repeated, his voice gaining strength. I've been in this business for over 2 centuries. I've seen economic upheavals before. I've watched species rise and fall, technologies come and go, and empires crumble into dust. He looked directly at Maya with eyes that held depths of experience that even humans might respect. You speak of efficiency and optimization, as if they were the only values that matter. But there's something you're missing. Something fundamental about the way we've structured our society. Which is? Maya asked, and for the first time her voice held genuine curiosity rather than predatory calculation. Stability, Qrix said. Predictability. The knowledge that when you make an agreement it will be honored for generations. That when you invest in infrastructure it won't be obsoleted by the next aggressive species with better technology. He gestured around the room. You see inefficiency. We see social contracts that have kept the peace for 1,000 years. Maya was quiet for a long moment, and I could practically see the calculations running behind those storm-colored eyes. That's actually a fair point, she admitted finally. Humans do tend to prioritize rapid adaptation over long-term stability. Exactly. And sometimes, Qrix continued, the cost of change is greater than the benefit of optimization. For a terrifying moment, I thought we might actually see Maya Torres back down, abandon her predatory restructuring, and return to the comfortable inefficiencies we'd all grown accustomed to. Kara's day. Then she laughed. Oh, Qrix, she said, her voice filled with something that might have been affection if it weren't so clearly the sound of a predator appreciating worthy prey. That's exactly the kind of thinking that got your species conquered by more adaptable ones in the first place. The silence that followed was absolute. You see, Maya continued, her voice taking on that gentle, teaching tone that was somehow more frightening than any threat. Humans learned a long time ago that stability is an illusion. The universe doesn't care about your social contracts or your 1,000-year agreements. Asteroids don't respect traditions. Supernovas don't honor diplomatic immunity. She stood up one final time, and now there was something different in her posture. Not predatory, not calculating, but something far more dangerous. Compassion. "We're not trying to destroy your way of life out of malice," she said softly. "We're trying to save it, because if you don't adapt, if you don't evolve, something else will come along that's even more aggressive than we are. Something that won't offer partnerships or shared profits." "Something like what?" Coordinator Blux asked, his voice barely audible. Maya's smile was sad now, filled with the weight of species-wide experience. "Something like us, but without any interest in negotiation." The meeting ended not with grand declarations or dramatic walkouts, but with the quiet sound of beings who suddenly understood that they were dealing with a species that viewed the entire galaxy as a problem to be solved. As the delegates filed out, some heading directly to communication booths to contact their home offices, others huddling in small groups to discuss damage control, I found myself once again alone with Maya Torres and her team. "Another successful negotiation?" I asked, trying to keep the sarcasm out of my voice. Maya looked genuinely surprised by the question. "Successful? We haven't even started yet." She gestured to her team, who were already packing their equipment. "This was just the introduction. Tomorrow we're discussing agricultural distribution networks." My blood went cold. Agriculture was the foundation of galactic civilization, food production, distribution, planet-wide farming operations that fed trillions of beings across hundreds of worlds. "And next week," Dr. Vasquez added casually, "we're scheduled to review transportation infrastructure." "What transportation?" "The networks that connected every inhabited world in known space." "The week after that," Webb continued, "we're looking at communication systems." I stared at them, the full scope of human ambitions finally becoming clear. They weren't just interested in trade routes or mining operations. They were systematically analyzing every aspect of galactic civilization, finding the inefficiencies, and preparing to optimize them. "You're not just negotiating better deals," I whispered. "You're restructuring our entire society." Mams turned to me with that predatory smile one last time. "Now you're beginning to understand." As they walked toward the exit, Lisa Park turned back and added, almost as an afterthought, "Oh, and Qrix, you might want to update your resume. We're always looking for beings who can adapt to new paradigms." The door closed behind them, leaving me alone with a growing certainty that the galaxy would never be the same again. Because humans, it turned out, didn't just negotiate like predators. They thought like apex predators, planned like apex predators, and most terrifyingly of all, they cared like apex predators, with the kind of ruthless compassion that reshapes entire ecosystems for the greater good, whether we wanted them to or not. The age of comfortable inefficiency was over. The age of human optimization had begun. And honestly, I wasn't sure any of us were ready for it.